There is an unspoken rule in the universe, one that transcends all species, all civilizations, and all life forms. A rule so simple, yet so powerful that it has kept peace for eons. That rule is this: don't touch the humans. For centuries, this warning has echoed across the cosmos, whispered in the corridors of every intergalactic meeting, passed down through ancient texts, and enforced by the most powerful beings in existence. The humans, you see, are different. Their strength, their resilience, their unpredictability, none of it fits the patterns known to any other species. In the vastness of space, they stand as a reminder that sometimes the unknown should remain untouched. But what happens when that rule is broken? What happens when the invincible, the unfathomable, decide to ignore the warning and engage with the humans? It began as an experiment, nothing more than a curiosity to them. The Eridani, a highly advanced alien race, known for their cold, calculating nature, thought they could understand humanity. They thought they could manipulate them, study them, break them. A species so primitive by their standards could surely be bent to their will. And so, they descended to Earth to make contact, to test the limits of the humans' endurance. But they miscalculated. Badly. At first, everything went according to their plan. They observed, infiltrated, and gathered data. They found humans surprisingly malleable, at least, on the surface. Their technology was primitive, their military was outdated, and their weapons were far less advanced than the Eridani's. They thought they could push, provoke, and ultimately control. But they didn't realize what they were dealing with. What they didn't account for was the sheer will of humanity. The hunger to survive, to fight back, to defy the odds, even when faced with impossible odds. The humans didn't break, they didn't bend. They broke them. One by one, the Eridani were forced to retreat. What began as a covert operation turned into an all-out war. The humans, seemingly powerless, turned the tables. The invincible Eridani, with all their advanced weaponry, were overrun by the most basic human instinct, to protect, to fight for what is theirs. They learned the hard way that humanity's strength wasn't in their technology or their numbers, it was in their unyielding spirit. But that was only the beginning. As the last of the Eridani ships fled Earth's orbit, the message was clear to the universe: don't touch the humans. And yet, some still did. They came. But this time, they were not ready for what they found. The universe was about to learn the price of ignoring the first rule. What could possibly be more dangerous than a species that had already defeated the most powerful race in the galaxy? The answer? Humanity's true potential, and it was waking up. But as one alien empire falls, another rises, and with it, the question remains, will the humans be ready for the war that's coming? Or has breaking the first rule set in motion something they can never undo? The universe had always been a vast and strange place. Civilizations rose and fell, each believing they were the pinnacle of existence. The Eridani were no different. They had conquered stars, bent galaxies to their will, and mastered the art of war in ways unimaginable to most races. But even with all their power, there was one thing they could never account for: humanity's unpredictability. For centuries, they had watched Earth from the shadows, observing humanity's constant struggle to survive. The Eridani, ever the strategists, had concluded that humanity was simply a minor nuisance, another fleeting species destined to fall in line with the inevitable march of time. They had been wrong. So terribly wrong. After the humiliating retreat from Earth, a cold realization set in among the Eridani leadership. How had their most calculated plan unraveled so swiftly? The humans, who had barely discovered space travel, had shown them something that no other species had: raw, unfiltered, untamed power. They had underestimated the sheer force of will that pulsed through every human heart, the relentless drive to fight against overwhelming odds. But it wasn't just the humans' ability to wage war that left the Eridani stunned, it was their potential. For the first time in the history of the universe, the Eridani faced a species that could challenge them in ways they had never anticipated. As their empire reeled from the loss, other factions began to take notice. They weren't as surprised as the Eridani had been. They had seen the whispers, heard the rumors of Earth's unyielding warriors, and they were eager to test the limits of this mysterious race. The HFY, a race of sentient machines, believed themselves to be the logical inheritors of the universe. The Kyle, a brutal, warrior-driven species, were desperate for any advantage in their constant quest for dominance. And then there were the Sillar, a secretive, ancient race whose intelligence had allowed them to manipulate the very fabric of space itself. Each of these factions had their own reasons for wanting to engage with humanity. Some sought knowledge, others, power. But none of them could resist the temptation to uncover what lay beneath the surface of the human spirit. For all the Eridani's failure, the message had been clear. Humanity was a force that could no longer be ignored. But it wasn't just other races that were taking notice. Deep within Earth's governments, military leaders, and scientists, a growing sense of dread began to emerge. They had no idea what was coming, no idea what the universe's new interest in their species meant. And yet, something inside them stirred. The humans were about to face a new kind of war, one that would not be fought on the ground or in the skies, but in the very heart of their identity. In the shadows, a select few began to question, had the universe truly underestimated them? Or was humanity simply standing on the precipice of something far greater, something beyond their comprehension? As tensions mounted across the galaxy, there was one thing the humans didn't know: they were not alone in this fight. But the allies that were gathering in secret were as mysterious as the threats themselves. A covert faction, made up of former military leaders, scientists, and even a few sympathetic alien races, began to form a resistance. Their goal was clear: to protect humanity at any cost. But even as they planned, they knew that the true enemy was still out there, waiting. And there was something more terrifying than any weapon or army. They didn't know who would come next. What would the next enemy bring? A species more deadly than the Eridani? A race whose power could shatter the very fabric of space? Or something darker, something far more insidious? The clock was ticking. And as humanity stood at the crossroads of survival and annihilation, one thing was certain: the first rule of the universe had been broken. And it was only a matter of time before the consequences would come crashing down. The universe had already forgotten how to respect humanity. Would the humans survive what was coming? Or would they, too, fall victim to the very rule they had so recklessly defied? The next move was theirs. But the question remained: could they even prepare for what lay ahead? The growing uncertainty weighed heavily on Earth. With every passing day, humanity became more aware of the storm brewing just beyond their stars. The governments, now fully aware of the intergalactic attention their world was receiving, scrambled to prepare. But preparation, it turned out, was something they were sorely lacking. They had never expected to be at the center of something far larger than themselves, something far more dangerous. In underground bunkers, military leaders were debating strategies, trying to form a cohesive defense plan against an unknown enemy. The weapons they had were outdated compared to the forces that now turned their eyes on Earth. Satellites picked up strange anomalies in spaceships that weren't from any known species, traveling with terrifying speed. Messages intercepted from across the stars spoke of something coming. Meanwhile, in the shadows of humanity's governments, a different kind of preparation was underway. A secret organization, born from the chaos of the Eridani conflict, began to take shape. These individuals, a mixture of former soldiers, rogue scientists, and even defected aliens, knew that Earth's only chance was to understand the forces that threatened them. They had one goal: to learn everything they could about the extraterrestrial species now surrounding their world. Among them was a woman named Director Alda, an intelligence officer with a reputation for finding the cracks in any situation. She had seen the alien technology firsthand, the strange advanced devices left behind by the Eridani when they fled Earth. What the general public didn't know was that the government had begun reverse engineering these artifacts. They had learned some things: how to harness their power, how to amplify human potential. But not enough. It wasn't enough to match the might of entire galactic empires. Director Alda understood that. But there was one thing no one had expected: the humans were changing, evolving. It was subtle at first: an increase in strength, in mental clarity. People were waking up to something deep inside themselves, an untapped potential, a hidden power that had always been there, dormant. And yet, despite the discoveries, Alda couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was at play. Who were these new alien factions, and what did they want with Earth? Was it just power, or was there something else? Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the true masterminds behind the invasion were already gathering. The HFY, silent and efficient, had begun to plot their next move. As sentient machines, they calculated every outcome, every possible failure. They had watched humanity's resilience, and they saw only one solution: eradicate the source of that strength before it could grow any more powerful. Their plan wasn't to fight a battle, they would simply remove humanity from the equation, snuff it out like an insignificant spark. The HFY were not interested in making mistakes. They had perfected the art of elimination. But then there were the Kyle, a race of merciless warriors. They had no intention of diplomacy or subtlety. The Kyle thrived in chaos, in destruction. They had heard of humanity's victories, and they thirsted for the challenge. They were not interested in subtlety. They would bring fire and blood to Earth to see if humanity could truly withstand their fury. Unlike the HFY, they relished in the spectacle of war, in the fear and pain of their enemies. The Kyle were coming, and they would leave nothing but ruin in their wake. In the midst of these conflicts, something unexpected occurred. A single human, one of the many who had felt the stirrings of this new power, had been having dreams. Strange, vivid dreams that were not their own. Dreams of ancient beings, of massive structures floating in space, of a voice that spoke not in words but in sensations, in emotions. The message was clear: prepare. Something is coming. This human had no idea what the dreams meant, but they could not ignore them. They began reaching out to others, hoping to make sense of the visions. Was it just a dream? Or was there something far deeper at play? Director Alda's team began to investigate the strange occurrences, but they were not alone in their search. Unseen enemies were already moving through the shadows, manipulating events to ensure that humanity remained ignorant. In these dark corners, no one was sure who to trust. Was the organization working to protect humanity? Or was someone using them for a greater, darker purpose? The tension continued to rise, and with each passing moment, the feeling that something catastrophic was imminent grew stronger. Earth's fate hung by a thread. The universe had been set in motion, but the question remained: could humanity survive the forces that now encircled them? The countdown was underway, but no one knew what would happen when the clock ran out. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they be swept away in the tide of galactic power? As the days passed, the atmosphere on Earth grew heavier. Something was coming, everyone could feel it. Governments had activated emergency protocols, and cities began to brace for an impact no one truly understood. Director Alda's organization continued its work in secret, gathering intelligence and refining humanity's newfound abilities. They had a theory that humanity was evolving in response to the cosmic threat, that the unknown power within them was the key to survival. But the question remained: was it enough? Across the galaxy, the HFY and the Kyle made their final moves. The HFY, ever the tacticians, began deploying vast fleets toward Earth, cloaked in secrecy. They were cold, calculating, and precise in their movements. They knew that the only way to ensure humanity's extinction was through complete and utter annihilation. They would not leave anything to chance. The Kyle, on the other hand, prepared their warbands. Each Kyle warrior was a living weapon, designed for chaos and destruction. They didn't care for subtlety, they wanted blood. They would rip through Earth's defenses with brutal force, showing the universe that no species, not even one that had made such an impressive stand, could challenge their dominance. Back on Earth, the first signs of conflict began to show. People were starting to experience strange occurrences. A soldier who had once been a mere foot soldier now felt an overwhelming strength surge through his body. A scientist, in the midst of her research, found that her mind was working at speeds she had never thought possible. People were awakening, but they didn't know why or how. The question of whether humanity could harness this newfound potential loomed over them. Were they evolving to meet the threat, Or were they simply becoming pawns in a much larger game? Director Alda knew that time was running out. Her team had uncovered the truth. The factions coming for Earth were not simply invaders, they were the beginning of something much darker. The Eridani were just the tip of the iceberg. The real enemy had not yet revealed itself, but the pieces were in motion. The Hazari and the Kayal were the front-runners in a galactic war that was about to sweep across the universe, and Earth was caught in the middle. The humans had fought back before, but this time they would need something far more powerful to survive. It was at this moment that the strange visions, the dreams, began to intensify. More humans began to experience them. It wasn't just one or two now, it was thousands, maybe millions. These dreams were growing clearer, more urgent. They spoke of a hidden weapon, a power buried deep beneath Earth's surface. It was ancient, older than humanity itself. Could it be that Earth's real secret lay beneath its very soil? And if so, would they be able to unlock it before the forces of the galaxy descended upon them? But there was a chilling twist. As the visions spread, so too did the fear. Some humans believed they were being manipulated. This hidden power, this weapon, could it be something that would destroy them, not save them? Was it possible that the dreams were a trap, a trick by the unseen forces that surrounded them? A faction of dissenters, led by former military generals and rogue scientists, began to rally against the plans being put in place. They argued that humanity should remain cautious, that they should not rely on a mysterious power they did not understand. What if it was part of a larger design, one that would doom them all? There were too many questions and too few answers, and the longer the debate continued, the closer the end seemed. As the sky darkened with the ships of the Hazari and the warbands of the Kayal drew near, Director Alda found herself torn between her growing sense of urgency and the gnawing doubt that humanity was about to make a terrible mistake. She'd had uncovered a crucial piece of information, a single fragment of a message left by the Eridani in their retreat. It spoke of an ancient race, one even the Eridani feared. The message was broken, incomplete, but the few words that remained were enough to send a chill down Alda's spine. The true enemy is not the one you see. It is the one you do not. The final countdown had begun. Every move now felt like a desperate gamble. Humanity had reached a crossroads. Either they would harness the power hidden beneath their feet, or they would be consumed by forces beyond their understanding. And with every passing minute, the weight of the decision grew heavier. Could they awaken the ancient power in time to fight off the galaxy's deadliest empires? Or would the humans, unprepared and divided, be swept away, just another casualty in a war they never fully understood? The tension reached a boiling point as the first ships of the Hazari entered Earth's orbit, their arrival heralding the beginning of the end. And just as humanity's defenders prepared for the inevitable clash, a single message came through the communication lines, a warning. They're not alone. Something worse is coming. As the final hour approached, Earth held its breath. The Hazari's fleet was now visible to the naked eye, their ships cutting through the atmosphere with terrifying precision. The Kayal's warbands were already descending upon strategic military bases, wreaking havoc across the globe. Panic spread like wildfire, but amid the chaos, humanity's hidden strength began to surface. Director Alda, torn between her doubts and the looming threat, made the call. She ordered her team to begin excavating the ancient site beneath the Earth's surface. It was a last-ditch effort, a gamble that the mysterious power buried for centuries could be the key to humanity's survival. As the teams worked furiously, the tension outside was palpable. Earth's armies, though outmatched, rallied in an effort to hold off the alien forces, buying time for anything to turn the tide. The moment came when they finally unearthed the weapon, not a traditional superweapon, but something far more extraordinary. It was a living entity, an ancient consciousness embedded in the Earth itself. The entity spoke not in words, but through visions and emotions, flooding the minds of those who made contact with it. It revealed the truth: the universe wasn't just a battlefield for galactic empires. It was a living organism, constantly shifting, evolving. And Earth, though it appeared insignificant, was at the heart of it all. Humanity wasn't just a species to be wiped out. They were a force, capable of influencing the entire fabric of existence. In an instant, everything changed. The hidden power within humanity, those strange abilities they'd been awakening to, wasn't just a defense mechanism. It was a reflection of the Earth's deeper connection to the cosmos, an untapped potential that could reshape the balance of power. The dreams, the visions, they weren't just warnings. They were invitations to become something more than human, to become a key to the universe itself. Alda's team, now fully connected to the entity, began to understand the scope of their newfound power. They could feel the shifts in the universe, the threads of time and space that could be pulled and woven. The Hazari, the Kayal, they were not the true enemies. They were part of a larger cycle, one that had been playing out for eons. The true threat was something older, more fundamental, and humanity had just stumbled upon it. With newfound resolve, Alda and her team sent a message across the galaxy, not just to the invaders, but to anyone who could listen. Humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. The universe might have forgotten Earth, but it was about to learn the price of underestimating humans. As the final showdown unfolded in the skies above Earth, something remarkable happened. The Hazari, in their calculated precision, hesitated. The Kayal, warriors known for their savagery, paused mid-battle. They felt it, the shift in the balance. The humans weren't just surviving, they were awakening to their place in the cosmos. The battle didn't end with the defeat of the invaders, nor did it end in total destruction. Instead, Earth became something far more important. The invaders retreated, not because they were defeated, but because they realized the humans had become something they could not control or predict. The story of Earth, of humanity, had only just begun. What came next was a new chapter 1, where humanity would no longer be bound by the limitations others had placed on them. They had touched the universe's edge, and now they had to decide what role they would play in the grand design. The question of whether Earth would ascend or fall remained unanswered, but one thing was certain: the first rule of the universe, don't touch the humans, had been broken. And the consequences would be felt for eons to come. In the silence that followed, the universe held its breath, waiting for Earth's next move.